Hi there, I'm John Gariepy and this is Popcorn Roulette. Each episode I ask a guest to come on the show, they suggest a movie, we both go watch the movie, we come back together and we talk about it. Today I have my dad with me, Bob Gariepy. How you doing, Dad?
Very good, JM. Excellent.
This is the second time you've appeared on the show.
Yes, I really appreciate being called back. Apparently it wasn't that much of a bomb the last time.
we have reports coming in from people. They seem to have enjoyed you the first time. I don't know why. I
appreciate that. It's good to hear.
Dad, you also do something on the show. I know you talked about it last time, but what do you do around here?
Just go to haverhillcommunitytv.org, and it's Friday night Eastern Time from 7 p.m. to 5 in the morning, and also the Golden Age Radio podcasts are available 24/7, Jay.
24/7. You could just listen to
haverhillcommunitytv.org 24/7. Just go to the podcast.
Years of listening.
Yes.
that's how we promote this.
I'm down to 100,000 hours of Golden Age Radio.
Yeah,
so I have a very limited amount of material.
There's only so much you can actually work with.
There's only so much material. You know, the whole second floor is full.
Yeah, that's our garage for you.
Can't move.
Today we're talking about Gone with the Wind, starring Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable, directed by George Cukor and Victor Fleming, both during different times.
Another great film.
They're also produced by Selznick. But before we talk about the movie, we need to get to these candies. You already got to some of these candies.
One of my favorites. As a matter of
fact,
I
got some dark chocolate pecan clusters. I run off to the bathroom and come back, and you've already sampled the
I already had a piece. I don't like to put things off, so I get right into it. Your brother-in-law, Tim, in Cheyenne, Wyoming, it's his favorite candy, and your mother sends him a box for Christmas, and I'm sure he's looking forward to getting it this Christmas. Delicious.
It's great. I'm still eating. You're not. So why don't you lead us off?
Okay. You might ask me, why did I pick
I might ask you that.
Yeah.
That is actually...
Is that the next question?
The first question.
Oh, my God. So, I guess I have this thing about history, and whether it's last time was Dr. Zhivago, Russian history, and this time Gone with the Wind, which is a great era.
I thought Dr. Zhivago was a long movie, and then you gave me a 4-hour movie.
Yes,
so
I wanted to increase the time span. And I watched it almost in one sitting. As a matter of fact, Gone with the Wind is such an epic that there was one person that was reported to have watched it 131 times. So I cannot say that I'm that much of an expert on it compared to him. But there's a lot of people that are very well versed with Gone with the Wind, so I'll do my best not to make any really bad errors in the picture. But it's a real classic, and the music, again, like Zhivago, the music comes on, and it's just captivating. At first, I would think if I was the director that I would show that scene of Tara in Georgia on the plantation where you had the beautiful landscape and everything, but instead, brilliantly, Mr. Selznick comes on with the words "Gone with the Wind," with like the wind was blowing those words
across the screen.
And what is his intent? What is he trying to suggest? Yeah. He's trying to suggest that's an era of American history that was unbelievably, in many respects, very charming and very cultural, but it's gone now.
Yeah.
So that's Gone with the Wind. And then it gets right into the scenery, and it gets into talking about the history of Scarlett's father, Mr. O'Hara, an Irish immigrant that came here, and to him the land is so important, because those of us that have also studied Irish history are very aware of what the importance of land is. And so he always tells his daughter, Scarlett, that this is the most important thing. And the last moment, the last minute of the ending of the film, it comes right back to that scenario.
Back to her
it comes right back to her
Tara,
saying, and tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
Because she's going back to Tara, because it's all there is the land.
Do you remember the first time you saw Gone with the Wind?
The first time I saw it, I was with your mother, and it might have been the first year that it opened.
In 39?
No,
That's
no,
not possible.
No, the first year that it opened in Haverhill.
Right, right. Well, I mean, it got re-released a number of times, so
right.
probably like 60 or 64 or something like that.
Well, the fascinating thing about it, there was so many different versions, and all over the world at the time, if you went per capita, it's the most biggest film ever done if you went by the era of that time. And what the cost factor was and the amount of people that were in the film. But we saw it when it first came to the theaters in this city, and I can't recall if it was in what year it was in, but 62, 63, something like that.
Right, right.
And it was just, since I'm a Civil War buff and so forth, among all the wars, I suppose, I'm a victim of my own desire to punish myself. And it's just between the music and the storyline and what it projected as far as what Atlanta went through in the burning of the city and all of the suffering that went about and my own personal opinions about the uselessness of any war.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, I'm a mini pacifist of sorts. So if it was just to see the war without appreciating and understanding what the dynamics of the people that were in the picture itself and the story byline that was written beautifully by Margaret Mitchell.
Thank you.
And she wrote that book, and it took her about 10 years scribbling in between her job of writing notes down, and finally she sent it off to someone in New York, and they said, we've got something here.
Yeah.
And they wrote a book on it.
Best-selling book. Wrote one book,
unbelievable. And as a matter of fact, Clark Gable, he didn't really want to play the part of Rhett Butler because he said the book, as it's written, is so appreciated and read by so many people. If I make one little mistake in the film, they're going to say, well, he blubbed that one up because I read the book and it's supposed to be said this way or done this way.
Right.
So he had some reservations about it. And Leslie Howard, that played the part of Ashley, he didn't even want to play the part either because being an Englishman that played the part of a Southerner and to try to pick up a Southern accent, he didn't even try. He didn't even read the book. He studied his lines on a daily basis and did his lines. And
that's interesting considering how much of this movie it was very much controlled by Selznick and like an attempt to like take every single thing and like
he was such a perfectionist.
Written tremendous amounts of notes on the subject, but that one of his main leads was able to walk on set and like learn his lines on the spot in a sense.
Just to get the part of Scarlett, he was such a perfectionist. He burned through a third of the money at budget in the first month. I mean, the first scene was the burning of Atlanta. And
not the burning of Atlanta, the burning of the depot station.
Depot station.
There's actual...
I stand corrected, sir.
That's
where I used to have
There's
to say
a
in the
technicality,
service.
actually, because that depot station was burnt by Confederate troops. We never see the Yankee troops in this movie. We never see the war at all.
It was an actual burning, though.
Right. Well, the general idea is that the Confederates had burnt down their own depot station before the Yankees had come in.
Well, that was
people think...
That was the depot station, not Atlanta, then.
Yeah.
We'll have to blame Mr. Sherman for that one a little bit later on in the war, General Sherman. Probably not many places down there named Sherman. But anyway, he was such a perfectionist and spent so much money. Just to find the part of Scarlett, I don't know, 400 or 1,400, we'll say 400 women that he went through interviewing.
Yeah.
And a lot of very, very famous, Tallulah Bankhead, a lot of very famous people that he interviewed. And it was surreptitiously of sorts that a friend of his or a relative brought Vivian Leigh.
Right.
When he saw her, and he says, there's Scarlett right there.
Yeah.
So she did an unbelievable job. Every actor and actress in that film did such a great job, and it looked they were destined for those particular parts.
Yeah.
They played a beautiful part.
Let's talk about the movie to some extent. Like, what kind of woman is Scarlett O'Hara?
Scarlett O'Hara is a very conceited, spoiled brat.
Yeah. That's certainly where she starts in that movie, although she continues along that vein.
She said her life following that movie, or her whole lifetime, was nothing like Scarlett, but if anyone follows the bio on her life, there's a very good correlation there. But that would get too extensive to get into her biography, but which is a story in and of itself. But a beautiful woman that played the part of a very immature young girl that wanted everything. And I think the reason why she wanted to get Ashley,
right.
The reason why she was determined to get him, because he was looking the other way, I think. And I don't think she could deal with that.
No,
that was something she wanted. Every man looking at her and wanted to take her out. But there was a captivating aspect of her personality and her character that even though she was a brat, and that's a kind word.
Well, this is the interesting thing.
Even though she was.
She's our protagonist. This entire movie is a study of Scarlett O'Hara.
That's
you
right.
know what I mean? So there has to be some good qualities to her.
She was still a person that we're sympathetic with.
Yeah, so why are we sympathetic with her?
Because down deep inside, none of us are perfect. And we all have our faults. And we see that based upon her upbringing and birth and childhood and raised on the plantation that she was, and everything she had her way. She never had to go without until the war, of course.
Yeah.
But she had everything her way, and sometimes beauty and everything your way can have its negative after effects that can come with it. And one of those is her character and personality suffered somewhat.
While we're talking about Scarlett O'Hara, might as well talk about Rhett Butler. He comes into this movie a few minutes in, and he pops in and out of this movie throughout the process of it. But like, he seems to inherently understand what Scarlett O'Hara is and how she operates in a way that other people don't. How come he knows better than other people?
Well, I think the character of Rhett Butler is such an intriguing personality that he's able to, as the author put it into the story, be able to look at things and understand them better than it seemed like anyone else could. He knew from the start that the South would not be able to succeed in this endeavor because of logistics and manufacturing and all the other things that the North had and so forth. And he could see that right up front. They didn't have the Navy, they didn't have that. And he could see that with Scarlett had these complexes and problems with her personality that, and how could he not be intrigued by her and love her, but yet she was in love with another man.
Yeah.
That a man that was married, Olivia de Havilland's character in the picture, who I thought did a brilliant.
Right.
That was a very sympathetic and a wonderful role by the wife in this particular role that Scarlett was trying to take the man away from her.
They both seem to like operate off of each other. Like Millie is Scarlett's sister-in-law through technicality more than anything else. But they end up becoming good friends over time. In fact, Millie encourages the fact that she's going to be her friend. And then through Scarlett's terrible abuse of her trust, she still continues to be her friend. But why do you think that Millie likes Scarlett so much?
Well, I think she realized her immaturity in this, even though she was an adult at this time. She sympathized with her, and again, that's the true character of Millie and the wonderful person that she was, the suffering that she went through.
They certainly play her like a saint.
And she overtrusted.
With minor symbolism, every now and then you would see her working inside as a nurse, taking care of the poor and injured troops coming back. It looks like she's wearing a habit in the shadows. Other times where like when she's on her deathbed, her hands are clasped in front of her. She's in a saintly pose, you know?
Well, she was in some similitude with Mother Teresa in a very lower level, of course. But she was a wonderful, kind person. And I think Olivia de Havilland playing that part did an extraordinary job. And it showed her kindness and forgiveness and humility, caring and so forth. In every movie, there's somebody like that.
We seem to be wheeling around the actors, so we might as well hit our fourth major actor. When we're talking about Leslie's part playing Ashley, what did you think of Ashley's role? How do you think he presented himself?
I think even though he had an officer military uniform on, it didn't show much combat in that picture. It wasn't designed for that.
No, there's no combat.
The picture was not about combat at all.
It was about the effects of combat.
But it showed him coming back from the war as an injured man. He was a man that I think he had true moral character. He was a very decent person. Naturally admired Scarlett, but he knew that he was marrying this other woman, Millie, and he was in love with her. But Scarlett threw herself all over him, and it's different to push a banana split away from you. If someone puts a chocolate ice cream or a box of chocolates in front of you, it's hard not to take one. So Scarlett is that beautiful that she kept throwing herself on him, and he realized that this was the wrong thing, and he finally told her that, and it broke her heart, and that's what the story just keeps going with the love affair and the scenes on who's loving who this day or tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of great scenes in the story, including Hattie McSomething.
I wish I could remember it off the top of my head.
She's the first black person to get an Oscar.
Yes.
And she did a brilliant part.
First black person to get an Oscar and wasn't allowed to sit at the table of the
She couldn't go in the front door. It was colored.
Yeah,
it was a back stairway.
Well, it wasn't even
5 cents to go up the stairs and
it
go
was
in to
a
see
completely
the movie.
segregated hotel. In a sense, she wasn't even
Well,
supposed to be in the
movie,
hotel.
going in to see the
Oh,
movie.
well, yes, that
on
too.
opening day, she couldn't go in the front door.
Yeah. I mean, well, we want us to actually breach this too while we're talking about it, because we have a movie that has complicated issues and complicated relationship with racism in general, because there's a general modern viewing of this movie doesn't hold up as well as a 1939 viewing of this movie.
There was a lot of scenes where the director of the film versus the original book that was written did have the Ku Klux Klan in it, with the horses and racing and running and so forth, and a lot more violent scenes and a lot more N-words and so forth.
Right.
And that was all taken out of this film.
Much of that was pulled.
Because I don't think the film, the directors controlling the movie were intending to sissified the film or take all racism out of the film. It wasn't a film about racism. It was a film about this love affair and so forth.
Strangely about I do wonder about like that time period in 1939. Movies just are different in the way they approach them different. I can see them thinking in 1939 that they're being very progressive in the way they treated a lot of their characters. But at the same exact time, we do have these problems with like Prissy, who's played by Butterfly McQueen, which must have the best name of all Hollywood actors I've ever heard in my life. You know, she plays the part of a lying slave who comes on and is flighty and whatnot. There's a lot of stereotypes involved, unfortunately.
There was a lot of blacks in the country at that time were upset that these black actors were allowing themselves to be portrayed in this very subservient, ignorant sort of an atmosphere. And but in 1861, I mean, young male blacks were not allowed to go to school. Black girls were allowed to get some education, but boys weren't. And it's a control and influence and desire not to allow, which history has proven that to be a wrong basis of race relations. But so even back in the 30s, there was a lot of following of the Depression and following the KKK and all these other things that are going on. There was a lot of resentment against it. But I look at it in terms of what our country was like in 1861. And sure, they might have glossed over and been a little easy on the racism things, because there was a lot of, as we're well aware of, there was a lot of very bad things that happened during the slavery era, which thank goodness it ended. But I don't think it was, this particular picture,
this
I don't
movie
think
was
it was
not going to end up
necessary
getting into it, is what it mostly came down to.
Slavery and violence and torture and whipping.
It would still take a few more decades before we would have legitimate movies that could actually broach this topic, which is unfortunate. But it's just, you weren't going to sell a best-selling movie off the concept of slavery being...
Well, it might not have been received by the general population.
Yeah.
There was one, following that train of thought, there was one at the grand opening. I have to point this out. Yeah. That watching some of the bios on the film and so forth, and especially watching the grand opening in Atlanta, and Atlanta was very privileged, and you would think, well, maybe there might be some bad feelings in Atlanta in regards to the picture or whatever. But the people in Atlanta were proud to have the grand opening right there in their city at this theater, I believe it was the Lowe's Theater. And it was something, you'd think it was like, it's like the London Square during the end of World War II or something, where the place was packed with so many people. everyone's out with their gowns and they're dressed and they're driving down and they're going into the theater and interviews, and this was a spectacular event.
Yeah.
Having the grand opening of that movie and all the actors coming in. And just one quick point on that is in 1961 was the centennial of the Civil War, and they had again another theater presentation, and a lot of the people were with their ball dresses, Civil War era clothes that they were wearing. And it was incredible that some of the original people from Gone with the Wind, such as Mr. Selznick, died 2 years before that. Leslie Howard, in 1941 or 42, goes over to England to be part of British intelligence and dies 2 years later. I mean, I could go on and on with those things.
Right.
But there's so many misfortunate things that happen where people died and they couldn't make it. Vivian Lee with her personal alcohol and other psychiatric problems, very sad things that happen. And that's always the case with these brilliant productions, whether it's films or books or whatever it happens to be. There's the byline in the back. What's happening behind the scenes sometimes is more unbelievable than what happened even in the movie.
Well, let's get to the negative review of the movie. This one comes from Richard Schickel from The Atlantic, was made in 1973. The movie itself seemed to me curiously lifeless, mostly talk, very flowery talk at that. That, I think, is because it reflected not an artist's sensibilities, but a producer's. Selznick's recently published memos reveal he's obsessed with making a film as literally faithful to the novel as possible, and to this end, he platooned screenwriters in and out of the project, nudging and fussing over the script, motivated, it would seem, less by any very expensive vision of what the finished work might be than by fear that the public would reject it if he tampered too extensively with the beloved trash. Selznick busied himself with insufferable memos, fretting over such trivia as sets, costumes, and makeup, and guaranteeing that men of independence would not stay long at his side. The result was a film that is entirely worthy of its source, glossy, sentimental, chuckle-headed, not one that would transcend as so many have been pulled from literature's bottom draw as the original work. Do you think that there's a chance that the Selznick's controlling hand kept us from seeing the work of like one solid written piece?
Well, I guess the best way to project on a director or anyone else that's involved in the production of some great thing like that is to go by the people that they're working with.
Yeah.
The movie stars, the people working on the set. What do they think of this particular person? And certainly he was a driving person that pushed every day, work, and change every little thing that, and it seems like that's what makes great directors,
Yeah.
is exemplified by Dr. Zhivago, for example. But in this particular case,
Yes.
I was so impressed in that gala grand opening thing, correction, when they gave the Academy Awards.
Yes.
And Vivian Lee was called up to get her award. She said, if I had to thank everyone that was involved in this picture, it would take as many hours as what happened to producing the play and the movie.
Right.
But she said, I have to really thank Mr. Selznick for his tireless energy and concern and perfectionist view and thing. So this particular person may criticize some parts of the film. I didn't find 1 minute of it boring at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm very concerned with listening to conversations that people are having and where they're coming from, what impact that's going to have on the development of the story as a whole, and what the relationships are. And that you can't just have a picture like just shooting guns all the time,
Yeah.
and fighting or whatever.
Right.
Like you see a lot of pictures today. That for a classic picture to be out there, it has to be interrelationships of people and personalities and so forth.
All right, right towards the end of the movie, because we're running low on time here, Rhett is leaving Scarlett O'Hara because of the death of their child. And he happens to say to her, no, I'm through with everything here. I want peace. I want to see if somewhere there isn't something left in life of charm and grace. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what Rhett's talking about?
Yes, I think so. He thinks as beautiful as Scarlett is, she doesn't have the humility, the humbleness, the grace, the caring for other people. And she even seemed a little bit cold in regards to even her own little daughter, right?
Yeah.
And Rhett loved that little girl. They really shouldn't have let her ride the horse side saddle. It was the first day she rode side saddle.
Yeah.
And it threw her and it killed her. And he went out with a shotgun and killed the horse, the pony. This was so devastating to him to lose that girl that he would run right off the deep end. Who knows how many days or weeks that he was in his room just drinking and not forgiving himself for allowing him to ride that pony.
Do you think that Rhett and Scarlett could have actually made their relationship work if Bonnie had survived?
Since we're short of time, I'll jump right to that point. And Millie dies in bed, and then Scarlett knows that, what am I, this dream and this world of fantasy that I'm going to be able to get the man that I love, that's not going to happen. And I've got Rhett over here who loves me. I'm going to make up with him, and in the meantime, he left the room because he saw her mulling over him. So he leaves the room. And now she goes back to the mansion, and he's there, and he's packing. And now she sincerely was of the mood, I think, that she was going to make the rest of her life with Rhett. But he didn't understand it because there'd been so many overtures. So when he leaves and he says, frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn. And she goes back into the house and she goes, lays on the steps, and she says, tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Tara. And she hears her father's voice. And he's telling her the land, Tara is the land.
Yeah.
That's all we have is the land. Beautiful ending.
Yeah.
But I think that Linda was designed to have a second part of it, but they never did write another book for it or do it again.
Unfortunately, if we end up talking about Scarlett, the sequel to that, we'll have to do it on another day. It's been great having you, Dad,
Thank
here.
you very much, JM.
Once again, they can find you on haverhillcommunitytv.org.
TV22, Friday nights.
TV22. If you like this video, subscribe, click like, that sort of thing. You can join the conversation at facebook.com/popcornroulette. You'll find all these videos are there, and you can say hi and like what's there.
That's it?
That's it. That's it.
It's all, it reminds me of something one day. That's all there is.
Yeah, no, this show has been gone with the wind. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.